This is the first of 3 videos which will discuss intervals. In this installment, we will look at generic intervals, interval quality, and the major scale method, which is a method of efficiently determining the quality of intervals. An interval in music refers to the distance between 2 notes. It does not matter whether the notes are played simultaneously or as harmonic intervals in this example, or sequentially as melodic intervals in these 2 examples. In addition, it doesn't matter whether the upper note in melodic intervals or the lower note comes first. All 3 of these examples are exactly the same interval. The generic interval is determined by counting the lines and spaces between the 2 notes, including the ones on which the notes are situated. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or a fifth. This example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or this is a sixth, and 1, 2, this is a second. When determining generic intervals, ignore all of the accidentals. In spite of the fact that these 4 intervals have vastly different accidentals and therefore will sound significantly different when played, they are all thirds. The quality of an interval is what defines the exact distance between 2 notes, or exactly how many half steps are there between the 2 notes. The following terms are used when talking about quality of intervals: perfect, major, minor, augmented, and diminished. Unisons, octaves, fourths, and fifths can be perfect, augmented, or diminished. Seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths can be major, minor, augmented, or diminished. It's easy to see the differences between the size of the intervals when you're looking at the keyboard. So here I have example of the 4 types of thirds: augmented third, major third, minor third, diminished third. And as we go downward, major is a half step smaller than augmented, minor is a half step smaller than major, and diminished is a half step smaller than minor. And looking at the keyboard, an augmented third, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps. All augmented thirds will be 5 half steps. All minor thirds will be 1, 2, 3 half steps. Notice that when I'm counting the half steps, I'm not counting with number 1 on the first key, because it takes the movement from one key to the next to make a half step. So there's 1 half step, from here to here is 2 half steps, from here to here is 3 half steps. While counting half steps to determine the size or the quality of an interval will get you the right answer if you have the right number of half steps, is not necessarily the most efficient method of doing it, and over the long run it can be rather cumbersome. And it can also sometimes get you into trouble. You need to beware of enharmonics. The following interval on the keyboard can be expressed 2 different ways when it's written on the staff. So here on the keyboard we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps. Looking at the most common way of what notes we have, you would think this is a C to an F. And here we have a C to an F. That's perfect fourth. But if what you are looking at on the page is written as a C to an E sharp, that is also the same number of half steps, and you cannot call this a perfect fourth. It has to be called an augmented third, because generically this interval is written as a third, and that must agree. Augmented third and perfect fourth are not interchangeable when you're writing it on the staff. The major scale method is an efficient way of determining what the quality of an interval is. And the reason that it works is because the major scale is a predictable pattern. And in every key on every major scale, you will get the same pattern. So from the root to the next root, or excuse me, from the tonic to the next tonic to the same tonic is a perfect unison. From the tonic to the supertonic, or from the tonic to the second degree, will always be a major third. Tonic to the third degree, always a major third. Tonic to the subdominant, perfect fourth. Tonic to the dominant is always a perfect fifth. Tonic to the submediant is always a major sixth. Tonic to the leading tone is always a major seventh. And the tonic to the octave of the tonic will always be a perfect octave, no matter what key you're in. For unisons, octaves, fourths, and fifths, we've already discussed that you can be perfect, augmented, or diminished. If the interval fits into the major scale, it is a perfect interval. If it's a half step bigger than perfect, it's augmented. If it's a half step smaller than perfect, it's diminished. So this is a generic fifth. In the C major scale, or in the key of C, there is a G, so this is a perfect fifth. C to G sharp is a half step bigger. This is an augmented fifth. C to G flat is a half step smaller than perfect, so this is a diminished fifth. Underneath here we have abbreviations that are common. P, instead of writing out the entire word, perfect. Capital A for augmented, or the plus sign is also another way of doing it. In the short term, when we're talking about intervals, the capital A, if it helps you think about augmented, is perfectly fine. But when we get to triads, this is going to be confusing. You will have to use the augmented sign or the plus sign. So you may want to just jump right away and start using that. But if that's confusing for right now, you can do either way. I will accept either way. And with diminished, lowercase d is the abbreviation for diminished, or a degree sign is what will have to be used later in the semester. Seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths are major, minor, augmented, and diminished. So if the intervals fit into a major scale, they are major. Half step smaller than major is minor. A half step bigger than major is augmented. And a half step smaller than minor is diminished. So starting here, we have our generic third. Think about in the key of C, there is an E natural, so this is a major third. C to E flat is a half step smaller than the major third, so this is a minor third. C to E sharp is a half step bigger than major, so this is an augmented third. And C to E double flat is a half step smaller than minor, or a whole step smaller than major, so this is a diminished third. Now, how do you go about using this to determine the quality of an interval? The first step is to figure out what is the generic interval. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a sixth. Second step, does the upper note fit into the scale in which the lower note is the tonic? So I ask myself, in the A major scale, is there an F sharp? And yes, there is an F sharp. So we know that here we have a major sixth. But what if it doesn't? Here's a new interval, still a sixth. And I am again going to ask myself, in the A major scale, is there an F natural? No, there's not. Is it larger or smaller than the major sixth, which we just talked about is A to F sharp? It's smaller. How much smaller than the major? 1/2 step smaller. So this is a minor sixth. Here's another example. Start with finding the generic interval. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have a fifth. Does the upper note fit into the major scale in which the lower note is a tonic? Okay, what is this lower note? It's C flat. What's the key signature of C flat major? 7 flats. So in C flat major, is there a G natural? No, there's not. Then you ask yourself, is it larger or smaller than perfect? What would be perfect here? C flat to G flat. There's a G flat in a C flat major scale. So C flat to G flat is the perfect fifth. This is larger than a perfect fifth. How much larger? 1/2 step. So this is an augmented fifth.